Yeah, what it dang dizzly doo wop. I am Zachary D, the Palsy Papa, and this is Palsy Papa Presents another installment, my very own life. Last time we left off, right at the luau, and my stepdad and us leaving for Georgia. Um, that was, man, I was third grade at the time, and it was very, very um, hard. I mean, I think that's an understatement. It was beyond hard. It was tough. Truly, it was very, very difficult. And so we leave, and we're going to Georgia. Little did I know that it's possible to live in a smaller town than the one I grew up, and that is truly. Uh, I lived in Ludowici, Georgia. Truly a much smaller town than where I grew up. And I felt like this should get its own video simply because it was um, sort of a breakage in the trajectory of my life that stopped the way that things were going. And it was a 3-year reset. Because I pretty well knew we weren't moving here for good. Even at that young, I knew we weren't moving here for good. I knew that this was going to be 3 years, and I don't um, recall a lot of monumental things from that period. I don't keep up with anybody from that period. Um, Occasionally, I will uh, see a post from or um, get a quick comment from my closest friend from way back then, but I haven't talked to that dude in years. Like, had a long conversation about anything. But this was like a reset. I had an opportunity to be somebody different, to to change stuff, and I was just getting old enough to be interested in girls, and there was a lot of that going on. Um, but we get ready to move, and the military is going to move our stuff in, and we go ahead. And my mom's mother, who I hadn't talked about a lot up to this point, Grammy, came with us, and she was a diabetic, and the reason I bring that up is because some of my biggest memories from her were still in her orange slices out of her purse and eating them because I didn't realize how seriously she needed those in case her sugar got out of whack, and she knew there were candy in her purse. And man, again, this goes and like, don't get me wrong, she was always around. It's just I could tell you the normal stories of my childhood all day. I had a very normal, very good, big family childhood. And beyond leaving my friends, leaving my extended family was tough because I'd be over at my nanny's house every weekend, and now we couldn't. It was hard. I remember Grammy came with us, and she was there for a week, two, stayed with us, and uh, we had a good time. We had no stuff. We played a lot of Uno, played outside, and it was it was man, it was cool. Um, but then I had to go to school, and the school that I went to was really kind of weird. It was outside classroom, and my mom again was involved in school some capacity. Like that's where she had her job. So again, always around. And I go to the school, and mind you, at this point, I had learned cursive. I knew we were gonna get ready to start state testing in Texas. And well, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry. So I go to the school, and they're like just now learning cursive in the third grade. And I remember I have already known this. This school is behind what I was learning in Texas. So I was like breezing through school, man. I was bebopping through it. It was all stuff I already learned, at this point, right? So I'd be bopping through it, and I was talking to um the kids, like were a few girls that I was interested in at the time, uh, and I remember one name in particular, Tess. Uh, she was just somebody that I liked her a lot, and so we go through this period where it's like I don't really fit in because I'm not uh, from there and I haven't been around that long. And I don't know if these kids knew each other. Were also military kids, and there was one girl from Germany who was in there, and there was like um, there was just a lot of different people. I got exposed to a different type of crowd. This was actually, by the way, also the first time I had seen a African American teacher, a black teacher. Um, for first time. All my teachers up to that point had been white, so I saw a black teacher for the first time. So it was just a very different experience, a culture shock. I got exposed to hip hop for the first time down there, and a couple memorable moments were the one. Well, so there were two really people I was really close to, both of which will get mentioned in this video. Um, there were two people I was really close to. One was the son of a coworker um, of my mother, Wesley, and he was into Pokemon, and I was into Pokemon. He was my sister's age, but that never really deterred me from going to hang out with him. And we actually spent a fair amount of time over his house because his mom, my mom were work friends, and he had a pool, and like he was doing very well, and like it was cool. Like we had a really cool type of experience there, and um, that was a that was a big deal. Um, and at this point, he's basically the only friend I got, and I'm living in a horseshoe of trailers, all of which, by the way, were military families. Um, and we would regularly hang out with all of them pretty much. And one of those neighbors were the first one to introduce me to PlayStation, like different kind of video games, Final Fantasy, RPGs, and all kinds of stuff like that. Um, Introduced me to Diablo and games like that, and I'd always kind of peripheral. I'd always had a gaming system, and I've always been into games, but I never really met anybody who wasn't a kid who played games, and this was the first time I'd seen like adults play games, and then well, I guess that's not wholly true. If we back up a bit and go back into something that could have been included in my first video, my uncle um, was in the military, was injured, and was in a wheelchair. So I guess outside of the person I told you in the first story about um, Brooke, who was missing a leg, who was my age, I also knew my uncle who who has a disability, and I spent a lot of time over there, and he played a lot of computer games, and it was there where I guess I'd first learned about Diablo and began playing that. Um, I tried very desperately, but to get back to uh, the time frame I was in Georgia, tried very desperately to um, fit in over there, and I don't think I ever did. I don't think I ever. I don't think I ever really fit in. I remember this one kid, Vance, who, man, we were very close. I know that at one point he felt like he didn't fit in, and like we would hang out pretty much every day because he lived in the same trailer park, but not in the same U shape. Like he was down a few trailers from where I was, and I remember he had to move away, and his parents, I guess he lived with his parents. His parents swore to mine that we would still see each other, and I was like, no, it's not going to be the same, and everything's going to be different. And this period of my time, um, this period of my life probably has the least amount of exciting stuff to talk about. There's not really much exciting to talk about. And in a lot of ways, it is the period that if I could not have gone, if I could have stayed in Texas, looking back, I probably would have. Um, it set me back in a ton of ways that Um, I don't know that it had any lasting consequences, but it did set me back socially. It did um, set me back educationally because this school was behind. But and then it also set me back too because remember we were going every 6 months to Houston. If I live in Georgia, I can't very well go to Houston, so we had to find a new hospital. And they had one in North Carolina, and I remember going there a couple of times, and they put me in night braces. Um, they put me in night braces, and these night braces were a nightmare. Honestly, a nightmare because they completely immobilized my legs all night, and I wore them for a couple of months, 3, 4 months, 5 months, maybe longer. Well, my mom got over it eventually cause like, what had happened was every night I would put on these pantyhose. Yeah, your boy was wearing pantyhose at night at, like, 10, 11 years old. I was wearing pantyhose every night, and my legs would get locked in these braces, and I just wasn't sleeping right, and, like, I'd have to get up early for school in the morning, and, like, it was bad. I did not enjoy it at all, and it was, like, causing me blisters on my legs, and, like, I couldn't bend my legs, and that's the way I sleep. I sleep with legs bent, um, curled up in a ball. That's how I sleep, and it's how I've always slept. Um, curled up in a ball, just um, and I couldn't do that, and it was frustrating. And there were many times where I'd have to like pee in the middle of the night, and like to do that, I'd have to take off my braces. Well, you and I both know that like getting doing anything when you got to pee real bad, if you can't just get up and go, you're in trouble. So a few times I like peed on myself trying to get these off, and like had to go in my mom's room for help, and like it was like bad. It was not good. Um, and then at some point she just got over that, and we stopped going to that hospital, and they wanted to do another surgery on me and stuff, and like she was like, "Nah, I'm not doing it with these people. Um, we'll wait until we get back to Texas." But that's basically all related to my disability happened up there. I was on the crutches at the time. I had moved to crutches finally. I was off the walker. Um, I was off the walker, and I was on the crutches. But a couple of other things that are relevant in this time period were this was the first time I started to realize I was different. Because yeah, I had a group of friends at school, and we all kind of bonded over wrestling. We had our own little wrestling clique, and like we would like, walk around the playground like whoop whoop. We're doing wrestling. And we're wrestlers, and like we're walking around with a big like just the stable of play wrestlers, right? But it was the showing interest in girls was the first time that I really started to realize that I was different. People were making fun of me, and like what you also have to understand too is I was in a weird spot. Like I was a weird kid. I remember one story, and this is really embarrassing to even tell, but there's one story where I actually pooped myself, and some of the poop came out of my pants leg and went and fell on the floor in the classroom. And I was like regularly pooping myself and like peeing on myself, and like I don't know while this is going on, but I was like not in a good spot during these years. I was very awkward. Um but I started to realize that not everybody was that awkward, and not everybody was that way, and like it was it was hard. I would cry a lot. Um I won't say that it was bad. Certainly it wasn't good. It wasn't like I described in the first video, it wasn't as good as first 10 years of my life. It wasn't the normal childhood, and then um at some point during this uh at some point during this, and I don't know if like it was earlier than we expected to go or what, but at some point during this, we actually go back home because my stepdad um got deployed to Afghanistan in Desert Storm, or was it? Wasn't Afghanistan? It was Kuwait. He got deployed to Kuwait during Desert Storm, and man, I had such conflicting emotions over that. But we'll get back to that in a second. Um, but I guess that's the kind of the way that that whole experience went. It was very much um, not. It was very much the antithesis of the first 10 years of my life, and nobody knew me and like didn't know how I was, and like my sense of humor didn't go over real well over there, and like it was it was very much uh, a different experience, and I hated it. I I did not have an overall good time. I remember the first time I like asked a girl if she liked me back, and there's one other earlier time. I'm pretty sure one earlier time where I was writing notes and stuff and whatever. And my mom still has that note, by the way. There's one other earlier time, but I didn't mention that in the last video because it's not really relevant. But this one is particularly relevant because they actually started making fun of me for it, and like there's one time um, in particular where this girl wrote a note to me on the blackboard in the classroom, and like turns out it was just all prank. She got put up to it. And it was hard. It was very difficult for me, and I don't know if my sister had a similar experience or not. But I know I looked forward to holidays because holidays meant we were gonna go home, um, and be with family. And I looked forward very much to the day that we'd finally actually go home because this was not something I wanted to continue. And I think those were probably the hardest years of my childhood. I'm not gonna tell you it was all bad, and I'm sure I'm blowing out um, the actual events, but I definitely felt different for the first time ever during that period of my life, and that makes it very very hard to want to continue when you've got these constant reminders of you're different and you're doing these weird things like peeing and pooping on yourself and like just a weird kid. Um, and there was nobody else who had a disability in that school that I was aware of. Um, not not a physical disability. Now there might have been other intellectually disabled or people with intellectual disability or mental disability, but there might have been other kids like that. But I'm in this weird spot where I could never really relate to those kids. I couldn't relate to those kiddos. I I never could. Um, never really wanted to. I don't think, but I definitely remember vividly feeling very out of place and having an awkward time throughout that entire period. Um, I remember one school event where we had to put on like the music through the ages. They made your boy the DJ. I wasn't dancing. What are they gonna do with a handicapped kid? They made me the DJ. And this is funny because like this was before I knew that I wanted to be th- I wanted to be in radio. But I've always kind of peripherally been involved with that, like with the Children's Miracle Network and this little school event, and that's I've always kind of been a centerpiece type dude and like a showman a little bit. No, no ego there. I have none. I'm being very forthright that um I wasn't some popular kid at all, but they definitely did, and I smarted off on the microphone a few times, and I remember my mom being like, "Why did you say that?" I was like, "They gave me the microphone to do what I want, bruh." Um, and because I had a microphone that could commentate on different things and like so this goes on, this is happening and like I said, this is gonna be a much shorter video than the other because there's less period of time to cover and honestly less memorable stuff to talk about. But I wanted to give this its own video because I wanted to show a contrast between the first segment, this segment, and the third segment of my life. Because it really, like I said, it really was a stopgap. It really was a stop start type of feeling that I had. And so we're going on. We're fifth grade now. Fourth grade's kind of unmemorable. Like I say, it's kind of unmemorable, except for the fact it's the first time I got a B. But I cried like whoa. I had an 89 in the class and cried like whoa. I had an 89 in the class, got a B and cried. Oh man, that was tough. But we get to fifth grade and everybody's trying out for band. And band was supposed to be next year. Sixth grade starts band, so you try out in fifth grade, pick your instrument. I didn't even try out. And I said, no, I'm not going to be here next year. What's the point? What's the point of me trying? So I didn't. I didn't try out at all. And that was kind of the big pause of, that was kind of the big exclamation point for me. I think at some point I said, none of this really matters because by this time next year, none of these people are going to remember me, and um, and I'll be able to start over again with my my friends back in Texas. And I'm not here to tell you that I don't remember some of the people from there, but honest to goodness, I think the two names I remember are Wesley and Vance, and a couple of the adults that we were around at the time, like Wesley's mom and our neighbors. And coolest thing about living over there was we had a Dairy Queen across the street. Oh man, we had a lot of Dairy Queen. That was cool. But other than that, it was just like, um, oh, and I guess the other thing that carries on to today is that was my dad brought home MREs, and the spaghetti MRE had hot sauce in it, and it was the first time my dad um let me eat hot sauce like early. I was putting hot sauce on my food, and that started when I was in Georgia as well. So I guess the hot sauce love carries on because I'm looking at a bottle right here on my desk, Melinda's Ghost Pepper. It says wing sauce, but I use it on everything. Um, and I guess that's really the only thing that carried on throughout that period. And I know my mom keeps in peripheral contact with our neighbors and Wesley's mom and all those type of people, but I just don't. And that kind of for me exemplifies how much of a interlude this period of my life was. And this brings us to 6th grade through 8th grade. Oh boy. Oh boy, howdy. Did I have an experience that way? Yeah. 6th grade through 8th grade, middle school. Middle school was a whole different ball game for your boy. It was awesome. I can't wait to tell you all about it next time. But for now, I am the Palsy Papa, Zachary D. And this has been Palsy Papa Presents My Very Own Life Story. And as always, don't be tripping, because I'm still crippin'. See you guys tomorrow.